Good morning, everyone. This is Ifat, your G Plus go-to gal, and today we are talking about virtual reality with Professor Yesha Sivan. I met Yesha actually in Israel when we were both giving presentations to bloggers, and let me tell you a little bit about Yesha. His presentation was amazing, and I asked him to join us. Yesha is the managing editor of the Journal of Virtual Worlds Research, and he's the head of Management Information Systems program at the Tel Aviv Academic College. And he's also developed the theory, the 3D 3C theory. And I'll let him expand on that a little bit more. So hi, Yesha, how are you?
Hi, everybody. Good to be here.
And
Great pleasure.
this is Yesha's first hangout, so I hope it's not going to be his last. And let's start with the theory. What are we talking about today? Virtual reality.
So, in effect, we are talking about augmented reality, which is the latest in say collection of technologies that are part of the grander scheme of virtual worlds, etc. And what I've prepared for us today is a short review, which is going to last about 20-30 minutes, that includes mainly a lot of examples. So with your permission, I'm going to drop myself here and actually bring the presentation.
Go for it.
And that is going to be interesting, trying to do that. Okay, and I think everybody should see the presentation now. Okay, so I will like to start basically by simply describing my main point. And my main point is actually quite simple. It talks about augmented reality via a very particular perspective. And it is the perspective of 3D, 3C worlds. Namely, I look at the following examples, which we will see today, as say, as through the glasses, and that's an interesting term to use here, but through the glasses of 3D, three-dimensional, the concept of community, the concept of creation, and the concept of commerce. And this grand theory will allow us to measure the potential value of each of the following examples. First, what is exactly this 3D and 3C? Well, let me talk about the, I would say, the meaning of a new medium, and by using simple examples. So in the 1980s, we had the personal computers, then we had the internet, then we had social web, then we had smartphones and iPads. Sometimes into the future, we're going to have this environment, which I call the 3D, 3C markets. And there are several characteristics to this 3D, 3C markets, which we will see now through the examples. So basically, this is a part of a media theory or a market theory, and I'm going to look at the examples of augmented reality through this perspective. I would also, for the purposes of the people who are watching this over YouTube, but also for the people who are watching here, we are having a more of a research type event in Orlando in December, a part of the ICE conference. This is quite a large conference, an international conference that has to do with information systems, and we're going to have a special event for doing research on this area. So if any of you are interested in this, definitely do get in touch with us. I want to start with the first example, which I'm sure many of the people who are watching here actually already checked it out. It's basically the Google Glass project. What you see here in the Google Glass project is the actual picture of the patent that Google has submitted and actually has received already. And And as you can see, basically the user is only using one eye in this model. And furthermore, it looks like from this patent, and that's the way they present it in patents, that this contraption, it actually goes inside the glasses, so you can actually take it off or take it on in case you want that. Obviously, this thing has sound capabilities, it has a microphone, GPS, and the standard sensors for 3 positions. It also has a compass to position itself around the wearer of this thing. I want to contrast this with this glass, with this type of glasses. This is taken from the BMW example. And in the BMW example, which is, again, you can definitely see it in the both the URL down here, and we'll post it as part of the notes of the meeting. The example really demonstrates how a technician gets instructions how to fix a car, and he gets these instructions via looking at the engine and having the set of instructions, the standard operating procedure broadcast to him. So the big difference here is obviously. Yep.
A quick question. So if these glasses are available to the public, will that kind of turn car enthusiastic people into mechanics and they no longer need to take it into the shop?
Theoretically, but I don't think BMW would like that. But theoretically, the information about the car and a new way to describe the manuals of fixing a car or improving a car can actually be now stored in an augmented reality method. This is a very effective way to do things. As you can see, and if you take a closer look at the image here, you can see that the broadcast is really showing him exactly where to open the screws, and then he takes the screwdriver and turns it on inside the real world. These two examples are connecting the world and the virtual world. Let me show you another example that has caught the attention of many people. This is a very interesting project that was just funded now in Kickstarter. And this is a full-blown virtual world helmet, meaning the world is projected into this helmet. You do not see through it. The world is projected on it. There are some very cool demos in the website how it will work. It's not glasses. This is a very important point. It's not glasses. As you look around, you will see the entire generated world, obviously from a computer or something like that, and you will not see the world itself. What is interesting about this is that these people were looking for $250,000, and they got almost 10 times more than that. That's $2 million and $400,000. So there's a lot of excitement about this particular device as it brings us new horizons. But in fact, when it comes to augmenting our life, we do not need to wait for glasses. This is a very important point, and I'm going to delve into a few examples now. This is actually an older example from the time when Obama became president, and I wanted to note two things here. And actually, Bevan, you can see yourself in this slide. I just noticed that. On the left, you see basically 4 screens, and as a user, you can choose the screens to watch the inauguration. On the right, you see the collection of your friends and their response on this particular event. If you take the idea of the 3D 3C, you basically see here, I would say, 3 components. You see the 3D, you see the community by the people, and you see just a little bit of very little minute creation as people add their own comments to it. As you will see, my claim is that the more you get of the creation, the more you get of the 3D, the more you get of the community, and of course, the more you get of the commerce, you actually get to the ideal of the 3D, 3C environment. These examples is what I consider sort of low-tech examples. Let's now delve into some higher level and obviously much more expensive examples. What you see here is the classical Da Vinci surgical system. This is a system that is being used clinically almost for 10 years now, and it's used to for laparoscopy operations. The innovation and the new thing that just was available 2 years ago, and it's now still in labs, it's not yet used, is the following example. And I will try to explain that briefly. Basically, what you see on the left is the image of the heart taken by one of the cameras on the right. And you see this little grid over the heart. This is basically a virtual grid on top of that that allows the computer to calculate the speed of the moving heart. From the speed of the moving heart, you can calculate the movement of the robot that is going to operate the heart. And the end result, or the hopeful end result, is the ability to operate on a beating heart. This is quite an amazing achievement. Imagine that the doctor is sitting 2 meters near the patient. He can actually sit, 2 kilometers or 200 kilometers, and basically looking at a virtual representation of the heart. It is a fixed representation. He or she operates on the heart itself, and the robot operates on the real heart as the robot is moving. So this is really, really, really an advanced use of...
So Yesha, just to make sure, the doctor is operating, but not specifically on the heart?
No, it's not. He's on the side. If you look at the previous slide over here, the doctor is sitting on the left of the patient. He's not near the patient at all.
So infraction can still happen, mistake can still happen, because if he does, the robot basically copies whatever the doctor is doing.
Yes, yes, yes. It's just compensating for the motion of the heart itself. I want to push this idea a little bit further and use a report by the World Bank, a 2011 report by the World Bank, which is called Potential of Virtual World for Developing Economies. This is an important point and may seem not connected to the previous examples, but my goal is really to connect all of these examples. So the bottom line of this report is essentially this number on the top right of the screen. It basically says that in 2012, the total market for virtual stuff, and you have the definition right here, is $21 billion. That is a lot of money. That is really a meaningful market. By the way, the claim of this report is that the potential of virtual currencies to distribute work in the world is immense. And the examples that they give starts from simple people, and we can see it in iPhones and stuff, who develop applications and simply charge for their applications. We also see what we are familiar with in the gaming world. We just had a short discussion preliminary on World of Warcraft, the whole idea of people collecting gold and then selling it. It can also be from platforms that takes a percentage from other people, like on consolidating platform. An example would be IMVU, that would be one world. but also, and this is very important, the business of micro work. And the number one player in the business of micro work is the very interesting initiative of Amazon, which is called Amazon Mechanical Turk. Amazon Mechanical Turk, for those of you who are not familiar with it, claims that they are the world engine for artificial intelligence. Namely, you can take a piece of work, slice it into smaller parts, put it on the web, allow people to do the particular tasks, and then collect it in a centralized way. An example of work that lends itself to this is, for example, reading maps and mapping roads on a map. Another example would be translating. Another example would be transcribing of stuff. So the potential of money that is generated from virtual stuff is obviously there. We are already familiar with that environment. Okay. The next thing that I want to talk about is something that you're also maybe familiar with. And this is a very interesting example. So this is a Kindle page. And if you read the Kindle today, you suddenly see some of the paragraph being marked and being shared by other people. Now imagine you could buy a book, but also buy the comments from another author. Now every book becomes an application that generates income for both the author as well as the people that commented on that book. This is a very interesting example because we see how new markets starts to be created using this environment. Okay. There are also obviously some not so pleasant results of such technology. And I actually wanted to just, for those of you who are not familiar with it, connect you with something called the SiteV. The SiteV is a project by two Israeli students. The movie lasts about 7.5 minutes. You have the link here, the YouTube link here. And it really is, I think, one of the first movies that show what does it really mean to have a collection of applications of embedded augmented reality. Very, very interesting. From the top right, you see a game. Then on the left, you see a small game that helps you cut salad. Middle right, you see somebody getting dressed virtually. And of course, their biggest part of the movie is the dating game and the dangers dating that when you have too much information. Now, this is actually very interesting because it was already out there. The technology is already out there. And what you see here on the screen now is the example of Face.com. By the way, Face.com is an Israeli company. It is no longer available. The reason it's no longer available is because Facebook bought them for $100 million. So we used to have it for about 3 months, and now it's going to be part of Facebook, and we're waiting for the actual application. But look at what this company is actually doing. When you give it on the left side an image, this image will give you an analysis of the gender, whether this person is happy or not happy. Look at the mood over here. Whether this person is smiling or not smiling. And this is a absolutely interesting. It's basically estimating your. So what I'm going to do now is essentially just share with you what I consider to be the missing parts of this vision. What is missing here before we can actually have this vision of 3D 3C world. So I'm going to talk about 5 things that are missing. 5 things that are missing. And a lot of people ask me, when are we going to have it? Well, the bottom line is that before we solve these problems, and probably a little bit more, we are not going to have this in a larger scale. We're going to have a lot of people playing with it. We're going to have a lot of conferences like this and the ones that I'm going to do in December, but it's not going to be common unless we solve these problems. And I want to be clear about that, so people keep their day jobs before we go in. But there's a lot of work to be done in these areas: interfaces, money, identity, scalability, and dependency. Number one problem that we have in this area is we do not have the mouse. And you cannot imagine Windows without the mouse. This is actually the 1970 patent of the mouse. The touchscreen that we have in our smartphones today is the key to the invention in the age of smartphones and iPads and tablets. Unfortunately, we do not have the interface for the augmented reality. Frankly, I do not believe the glasses is going to solve this. There's a lot of research in this area that basically show that a large percentage of the population cannot even deal with it. There's several problems with the double focus issue, where you have to focus on both the local of your glasses and the looking forward. Some people it may work, some people it may not. I'm actually demonstrating here a little picture. I don't know if you can see that. This is basically a mind capturing device. It's basically like a little hat that sits on top of your head and directly reads your thoughts, and from that you can sort of control the world. This is obviously experimentation, it's not yet real. We are actually missing this, and we do not have the solution for the interface that is going to be key here. So that's one agenda. Another agenda, which I've already alluded to, which I think is actually extremely important and often neglected, especially by the engineering type of people and those who are developing this, is the business of money. How do we connect the virtual products in a serious way? And just to give you an example, until this date, we do not have micropayments in the internet. It does not exist. And anybody that has tried to deal with that know that there are major, major, major problems. And these includes issues like of international tax, issues of who basically takes commissions from who, and what type of commissions. Today, commissions in some of the environments like IMVU or even Apple is 30 or 40%. This is unacceptable. This doesn't make sense at all, especially if you are dealing with micro payments of cents or subcents. There's a whole business of fraud, and how do you do return of funding, and also the business of money laundering. Anybody that is dealing with exchanges know that the FBI is on top of them, because that's a way for people to basically launder money. This is actually a really, really important area, and there's a lot of research, and the World Bank report that I've talked about earlier is a good start for that. The next thing is identity. And actually, this is already becoming almost a solved issue. Today, we see many, many, many more sites that starts to allow you to log in with your Facebook account, as well as your Twitter account. The only problem with that idea, so technically it works. Technically, you can actually have one type of login. The only problem with this is that you do not own your identity when it's in Facebook. I would love to have a place that holds all my identities and even pay them, but actually have control over that, meaning I know who asked to use my system, etc., etc. This is the key thing for the previous issue, for money. It also can prevent crimes and basically to create what we call the trusted market. the concept in economy that basically is a key for any of these things. A second thing, which actually we had a live demo, is the business of scalability. And I don't know, how many people do we have now, Ifat?
How many people are watching this?
Yes.
22.
Okay, so at 22 people, the whole thing collapsed. And this is a common problem. Every time we move from one person, two people, three, that's easy task. But when it comes to scalability, and we have many people all over the world performing at the same time, it creates huge problems. And these problems are not solved. You know, it's very clear why there are only 10 people here at the bottom of the page. Bevan and I have worked a lot in virtual worlds, and we know that if you have 30 people, 30 avatars in your island, the whole thing collapsed and the whole thing stopped working. So we cannot have serious business or serious commerce when we have these problems. What you see here, by the way, is an experiment by Intel to demonstrate 500 avatars in the same place. Of course, the only problem is that all these avatars are wearing black. Of course, that is completely unacceptable in the world.
Yesha, when you take that and you apply that for World of Warcraft, for example, where millions of people are playing on servers, or you apply that to Hangouts on Air that are happening all over the world at the same time, being recorded and displayed on YouTube, that kind of like scales the entire thing, right?
No.
No?
Because World of Warcraft, how many people can you have at the same time on the same screen is the question. If you have 20,000 servers running million people, that's good. But at the end of the day, you can have a max of 100, maybe 150 avatars in the same screen. You cannot have more than that. Plus, you have to understand that World of Warcraft is a very limited interaction. All the textures and all the data is already stored in your computer, and what is being transferred is basically just the movement of things. So it's pretty limited. And here's an example that we have seen now. There's a big difference between broadcasting, which is done with CDNs and sharing, and can be, if you see this movie, 5-second latency, 10-second latency, 20-second, doesn't matter. And interaction, and the kind of interaction that we're looking for in an augmented reality environment. So still unsolved. It's also an issue of bandwidth, but also computation. Last but not least is the business of interpolarity. And the interpolarity business was solved in the internet. We do see Explorer, Firefox, and Chrome all looking at the same pages, all using the same HTML, hopefully soon HTML5. In the virtual world and in the augmented reality area, we do not have that standard developed, which means we live in silos. You can have the silo of Lyre, and Lyre is a wonderful thing, but still it's Lyre. And if you put an object there, then it's there. Talking about a virtual augmented reality from Europe, or other examples like that. So we are still looking for the solution here for the sharing and transfer of objects and identities from one place to another. For those of you who are very interested in this, I highly recommend that you check the MPEG-V effort. This is an effort out of the MPEG group that I had a benefit of participating in, which basically strive to do this. But I know what we did there is I don't know, 2% or 3% of what needs to be done. And the forces in the market today really push everybody to do their own thing. So there's a little bit of work to be done. I want to conclude the presentation with sort of a positive outlook about what's going to happen in the next couple of years. Basically, I do see this area is emerging. I see a lot of progress in the supply side, namely graphical processor units, augmented reality. Google Glass is one example. I do see the bandwidth becoming cheaper and cheaper. imagine the value that we're going to get from the fourth generation, the LTE in mobile phones. I also see a huge growth in the market, both from the younger population that are very well familiar with virtual worlds, and I call them the messenger generation, as well as from older population, people with more time on their hands and actually the need to express and engage. So I do see a good push from both the supply side and the demand side. And this is a very important point. Once we get and we solve the connection to the commerce, then it's going to feed itself, because once people start to actually gain money out of it, and we saw it with the applications in the iPhone business, which, by the way, was an after effect. You know, a rumor has it that Steve Jobs didn't even want to have the application store. He said, we're going to develop the applications, and that's it, and the world is going to. But the application store really proved that there is a lot of people out there that are willing to create stuff. And once they get remuneration for it, once they get money from it, they get the economic value for it, then it actually pushes itself forward. So I'm really hopeful that we will get this, and I wish everybody a great time in actually harnessing the value of it. So that concludes the official presentation, Yifat?
Yes.
And now you take the helm.
So we're going to open up to open discussion, and there are a few comments that are coming in the stream. One of them is the question whether HTML5 is going to solve the issues.
That is a superb question. I don't know who asked it.
Chris Lang, yay.
Chris Lang, Chris Lang, the author of, what's the term there? Lenses, very good. I actually read the first third of your book. So I don't know if you know, but I was until last year the W3C head of the Israeli office. W3C is the organization that develops HTML5. And frankly, I'm very hopeful. HTML5 has some very interesting features that relate to 3D with WebGL, etc. The only problem is that we see two trends now. First of all, they didn't get their act together. And there is a big problem inside the standardization agency who's actually controlling this standard. So it's not happening fast enough. And there was a certain blow, I think, last month when Facebook essentially, which was the poster boy of HTML5 developer, actually took their application and rewrote it mostly in native code for applications. So I'm hopeful it should be there. It's taking too long,
Yes.
but that's what we have.
Okay, so just if I could jump in real quick, and now you've really inspired me to ask some questions here. How do you see? Okay, so where do you now that I know you're a W3C lead, where do you see things like where do you see the code lying? Of course, we have, you know, for those of you who aren't application specific, you have big chunks of code that run on a server. You have a back-end database where it's all stored. Then what you want to do is you want to have as many things happen on the platform, either in the browser or on a phone, as you can that are specific to the user, so that you can free up the server. Remember that 30% of the $1.5 billion Facebook pulls in a year, 500 million of it goes to support the servers, and that was a year and a half ago. So we want to have things run on the machine. So can you talk more about, from a programmer standpoint, well, I've got you here cornered, how do you see things running on a machine? My apps are built to run from the server because it takes no update. It's immediately deliverable. That takes tons and tons and tons of server resources, and it ain't cheap. So how do you see these kind of applications scaling, as you were talking, between the phone, the glasses, the server, the browser, and everybody in between?
So I think I have one solution for you, and the solution is called CDN, basically. But and for those of you who are not familiar, it's basically content delivery networks. We will never have all the data that we need and all the application that we need inside the end device. On the other hand, running these servers from far away, and here in Israel we notice that a lot because many of the applications actually run in Amazon and they're not in Israel, or
Sure.
you know, the nearest Amazon site is in Europe. So I'm definitely looking forward to, and HTML does support that with better connection to CDNs. That's going to be a must. We also need to remember that bandwidth is improving, mobile bandwidth is improving, calculation inside the device is improving, and today engines do allow that. I want to actually take that and actually connect it again to the commerce side of things. And many people talk often about net neutrality and how the fact that all the packets are equal. I think it's not going to survive. I think we are going to need to pay a little bit more for the packets that we want more. And when it comes to augmented reality and we are walking on the street and we're looking for instructions, or we're looking to identify with face recognition, this is data that I really need now, and I'm willing to pay a little bit more on this data than to see the chats that are coming from various communities. So we are definitely looking, and in my thinking, when you talk about 3D, 3C, you sort of attach a value, economical value, to the object or the interaction, and then you are able to actually measure it and pay for it.
Wow, that was you actually jumped right forward to the next thing that I wanted to ask you about, and that is
perhaps in fact you can also let other people ask. So
Chris, go for it. Go for it. This is anyone who needs to you know, have a question, jump in, open interaction time. Go for it, Chris.
So, so I kind of want to open the door on this. One of the things that I wrote about in cleanses, and the thing that concerned me the most when I started writing it is, and we stood on the balcony of my condo in Phoenix before we moved to Denver. We talked about this a lot. As I looked out on the balcony, I could see 40, 50 cars. I could see the businesses down the street. I could see, you know, all the trees, the bushes, you know, the temperature in the air, the weather, all not then social on top of it. So I started really thinking about, gee, how is the eye going to be able to, now I can identify what I'm looking at in this room as I look at my coffee cup. The rest of the room blurs. My eye does that naturally, and it provides focus on what I'm looking at, and it blurs the rest of the room a bit, and it focuses on it. You run into problems with these glasses and these contact lenses. You can demonstrate that as you try to focus on your finger as it comes closer to your eye. How do you see these devices solving that problem? Knowing what I'm looking at and providing relevant data on it. Am I looking at the plant? Do I want to know, you know, what the girl's name is walking by?
That is exactly the interface challenge that I spoke about. Selecting, you know, even if you look at the Google Glasses movie, it's not clear when do you make the selection. If you're looking through the window, maybe what you want is to open the window and not look at the weather. And if you look at the phone, maybe you're just waiting for a phone call and you're not looking for your contact list. This is not, I mean, it looks very well in movies, but in the real world, it is something that is, I think, completely different. I do like much more the use of the iPhone as a magnifying glass or as a way to look at the world. And on that, you will have several ways to say, okay, I'm now looking for this and I'm now looking for that. And by simply taking your phone and pointing it at something, you actually mean, I want to act and do something with this particular thing. And perhaps with voice or perhaps with a gesture, you can say what type of action you want. This does not exist. I mean, we are still extremely far from it. And again, one of the big challenges that we have.
There's another question from the stream. Adam, who was here while you were gone, is
Okay.
actually asking if there's some kind of a virtual marketplace where people can set up shops and sell real goods, kind of like Amazon in 3D.
Well, there are at least 2 or 3 places like that. I will give the example. Well, obviously, the neat example is something like Second Life, etc. But that is a virtual world. It's not an augmented reality area. There is a technology or an application by the team that created Layer. It's an application called Stick2, where essentially you can design an object and position it somewhere in the world. The position is calculated both from the GPS as well as the image recognition of the particular scene. So for example, if you are positioning a virtual vase in this room, it will take the GPS of the big room and the scanning of the table. That particular object is now in a store that people can buy, sell, or relate to. Their initial idea is not so much to sell these, but to basically allow advertisers, for example, if you have a new car, you can position the car in several places and have people discover it. So that would be one example. This is just an initial phase. Really, it's just starting. It's not even out there yet.
Another question is, you're familiar with Layers, right? The application for the Android.
Yep.
Lawrence is asking, could they become the home of standardization? Perhaps all third parties will develop layers for Layer?
Well, they may. This is a Dutch-based company. They're doing a lot of good things. Unfortunately, usually these small companies are not aware of the power of standardization. Plus, their business model often does not allow for it. I had that experience with several companies that came out early on. It may. I know there are some people talking about, in the lines of ITF about coming up with some standardization things. Some people in W3C are talking about this. There's a group specifically deals with 3-dimensional objects and their location of the world. There's another group that talks about positioning things in the world and storing them all in one place, namely Google Maps. Standardization is a complex thing, and it's not necessarily for small companies. You really have to invest a lot of energy in this, but they may.
Another question is, what language, like a programming language, do you feel will be the server of XML? Chris, go for it. I'm like totally not in the programming world.
Okay, so as we try to transfer all this data and describe these things,
yeah,
this is the thing that I'm really interested in, is how do we describe them? I'm really good at making false starts and finding out 6 months down the road I should have been paying attention to something else. So how do you see us describing these things in XML? Does schema.org fall into this? And is that at least somewhere to start for now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everything in the world is being described in XML. XML is like a generic description language. I guess what I would say is that for now, for experimentation, for demos, for talking with clients about potential projects, I would go with the actual platforms that are out there, and there are at least 2 of them. There's Layer, and then there is something called Orosma, from the term Aurora, that allow you basically to play with putting augmenting stuff on the real world. And then essentially you describe this in the usual 3D standards. You attach to it some XML with the location and then some descriptions. And then actually at the end of the day, you click on them and you get into a website, or you tweet about it, or you go into their Facebook page.
I thought your comment about Face.com and Facebook was very important, because we can see that Apple's preparing by letting us talk to the phone. Google's preparing by identifying us and our businesses as real people. Facebook's been preparing for a long time with their Xbox and the rumored release of some type of goggles for the living room. Where do you see Facebook coming into this at? Because they ain't going to be left out. There's going to be four big players in this game.
That is an interesting thing. By the way, there is another interesting angle to Facebook, apropos Facebook. They just started with some, they have some interesting three-dimensional stuff that they're thinking about, but I think Facebook is very committed to the text side of things. I do not see them doing anything practical, although there was a rumor, which is actually interesting, they are talking with another Israeli company called Waze, who is the #1 user-generated content in the area of navigation. And Waze is one of the most amazing company in augmented world. They really augment the entire world. So maybe that will be their intake into this environment.
What is the URL? Is it ways.com?
What is that? Waze, W-A-Z-E.
Z-E.
One thing I wrote about in Cleanses, Isha, is I talked about how our personal information being shared widely was our personal, was actually our money on the web. And that we got lots of information back by sharing, you know, all of our location, our preferences.
Yeah, there is actually a working example of this, and anybody here in the US are familiar with this. It's basically our credit report. And what's nice about our credit report, that every time somebody is accessing our credit report, we know about it. You know, if we call in Experian and ask them who accessed my credit report, I can tell the companies and organizations that checked my credit. Now, in the very near future, I will own that, and every company that wants my data will have to pay me a little bit, few cents, because frankly, Experian is getting paid by each request. So if Experian is storing my data, please, I want to get some of the money out of it.
That's actually very interesting because you're kind of like twisting the credit score in America and like who owns it and who controls it.
Yeah.
So that's a very interesting. And actually, if you're talking about that, why won't Facebook pay you for selling your data to their advertisers?
Exactly. And there again, there is an example. If Google is putting an ad on my site, I get part of the funding, and it works fine. It's just great. It's a wonderful and beneficial relationship.
So Google is actually leading the way in sharing an open source and free and augmented reality and,
well,
and Hangout.
Are you, excuse me?
Yes.
Is anyone able to hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I have a question. Earlier, like Chris asked, there's a lot of information available with me. Like if I'm walking on a road, I have people, I have information about them, I have information about the buildings, I have information about the navigation. So how I'll be able to manage that information? Like what part of that information I want to access? There'll be a lot of information with me, but how can I judge what part of, how can I'll be able to tell my device that this part of information I want to access right now?
I'm not sure I got 100% your question. Are you talking about information about yourself or information about other people?
About other people. Like suppose if I'm going to a place, I'll have the information about the buildings on that road. I'll have the information about the navigation from one place to another place where I want to go. Also, I'll have the information about other people whom I'm meeting on the way. So I need to tell the device like right now I want information about this person, and right now I want the information about this building, or right now I want to go to this place, so please help me out with that. So how I'll be able to do that in future? There's a lot of information.
It's a very good question, because today the interface does not yet exist. So we need some kind of a way to select, and because if you look through glasses on the world, it's surrounded by tons of information, and just imagine that you, through the glasses, you could see all the data that resides in Google Maps. So you need a way to select the right layer for you to, and we do not have that solution yet.
There's another question from the stream, actually. Ran is asking, virtual worlds need 3D space and avatars, so there isn't so much to look at in the interface. What do you think?
Well, my basic thinking is that this is correct. If you are working in a World of Warcraft environment and not looking at the real world, then the interface could be much simpler than that. By the way, the current interface of virtual world, anybody that play with the keyboards know that it's completely impossible, but it's a simpler challenge. But on the other hand, the real world and the virtual that is attached to it, namely augmented reality, is a very interesting place, and there are many more applications than just the immersion of virtual world. I mean, I see virtual world as a small part, 10%, 5%, 2% of the bigger scenario. So creating an interface for the grand scheme is a more interesting challenge. And by the way, let me phrase that a little bit different. It's not just the interface of actual access, it's not just the pointing device, not just the input device. It's the entire understanding that you are now in an environment where you have various devices, you have a lot of people, and they all connect to each other. We do not have the right approach to this yet. We are really looking at the right approach. And it will come from something that is quite simple. I mean, hopefully, I'm sure it will arrive somewhere, but just think about the touchscreen and the level of changes that we had with the touchscreen. Again, rumor has it that when Apple came up with the iPhone and it had no keyboard, then the people in RIM couldn't even think about it and said it's not a phone if it doesn't have a keyboard. Well, apparently it is a phone, and you can have a virtual keyboard. So we are looking for a solution like that, which we don't have today.
So we are...
What do you think, what kind of...
Go ahead.
Yeah. What do you think, what kind of solution can we have for this kind of problem? What kind of interface we can imagine about to solve this kind of problem?
This is exactly the research that we need to do. It's a big challenge.
Okay.
So we are... go ahead, Yesha.
So I need to skip out, so I think I will conclude by basically saying that I think, Ifat, really, thank you very much for organizing this. It was a great pleasure. Lots of good questions. I really like the Chris's Plenzo story, because it really is the kind of thing that makes you think about the entire array. I think as people who are looking at this and people who are researching this, we should really look at the bigger picture here and identify the various components. Plus, we do not want to repeat the mistakes of the past. In the past, the internet has developed and has suddenly forgotten the business of commerce. And therefore, we have only limited amount of people who are enjoying the commerce side of the internet. I hope that in the area of augmented reality in 3D, 3C world, we will have the commerce, and therefore we will allow many, many, many more people to enjoy the economic benefits of these interesting technologies. So thank you again, Ifat.
And thanks for coming, Yesha. This is great. And everybody, if you want more information about augmented reality, about the event in December, that's in Orlando, you can follow Yesha on Google+. Hopefully we'll start sharing there. And if you have any more questions, you can leave them in the event section or on the G+ GoToGal in the address right here. And we'll follow them with links and answers and interaction. This is not over. You can watch it later on. We'll edit a little bit so that we don't have all the mishaps in the middle. And thank you again, everyone, for showing up, for the great question, for the interactions. And we'll see you next week.
Great. Thank you very much, Ifat. Bye-bye.